Today we're going to talk about writing feedback and how to give it to somebody effectively so that you are helping them and giving them information that they will actually try to use. So what is peer review? Peer review is a type of feedback process that involves peers who are people in similar qualifications, area of specialty or abilities, and in a school setting, peers would be other students. And the review part of peer review is the process through which feedback is given on a draft. So you're reviewing somebody's work and giving them advice on how to improve it. And a peer review can actually happen anywhere. It can happen at school. It can happen at, for example, publishing in a journal or a magazine, or even professionally when you're working, getting feedback from other experts in the field. And a peer workshop specifically refers to the time set aside to provide feedback and share feedback amongst your peers. So why are we doing peer review? Well, peer review is actually pretty important. First of all, it allows you to help each other and to learn from each other's mistakes, to learn from each other's successes. You get to see how other students are interpreting and approaching the assignment. You are able to get feedback from multiple sources and multiple sets of eyes. And you're able to practice giving feedback or critique, which is almost as important as getting the help on a specific assignment. And you can practice gracefully and graciously accepting that feedback and utilizing it to make your assignment better. And you need to be able to determine what feedback or critique is actually helpful and should be applied to your draft, or what critique and feedback is not helpful and should be ignored. And of course, professionally, peer review allows people to learn from each other's ideas, practices, and processes, and allows them to receive helpful feedback on their ideas, writing, research, practices, and so on. And specifically in journals, why we like journal articles is that peer review is part of the process of accepting an article for publication. And if peers do not think it meets the minimum acceptability to be published, as far as correctness, accuracy, importance, and so on, then it's not going to be published in the journal. So that's why we consider journal articles to be really the gold standard for scholarly research, because the standards are so high with a formal peer review. And it ends up increasing the article's credibility and trustworthiness, serves as a barrier to prevent publication of bad research, such as poor methodology, analysis, application of theory, and understanding. Serves as a barrier to prevent publication of bad writing. So some top-tier journals' acceptance rates are as low as 0.001%. So you have to be good at what you do, put your research together in a solid way with methodology, analysis, application of theory, and understanding, and be able to write about it well. And it allows other experts in the field to provide suggestions on unpublished writing and research, and it improves ethical applications. Blind peer review can decrease nepotism, favoritism, cronyism, so that we get the best possible articles published. So the basis of giving feedback is that you should follow the golden rule, and that is to help each other. The goal is to help each other create better drafts. And there's no competition in this class. So the real idea here, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or treat others as you would like to be treated, is that you want help, you want to be able to get feedback to write a better rough draft. You need to assume that they do as well. And so you need to keep each other's best interests in mind. And the types of feedback that we have, there are three. We're going to start out with positive feedback, which is important and often gets overlooked. But positive feedback is where you point out what is successful, what's been done well in the draft. It includes compliments and encouragement or motivating statements. And examples could be, I really like your thesis statement. I know exactly where your paper will go. Great job developing your point with source material in the second paragraph. Your voice is very engaging and your sentences are very clear and easy to read. Keep doing what you're doing. Great job on your draft. So positive feedback lets them know they're doing well. They should keep working on their draft. It's not a total loss. And there are things that they should keep because you don't need to continue improving on them or working on them as much as, say, other things that need to be worked on. The positive feedback is very important, lifts people up, lets them accept the critical feedback, which we're going to talk about in a second here. And some people actually do a feedback sandwich where they have a positive feedback statement and then a critical one, and then a positive and a critical to balance out the feedback that they're giving and make it more digestible so that the person receiving the feedback can internalize it. So the other type of feedback that we want to do, because you can't just be positive, you also have to be critical, is called critical feedback. And that's when you tell them what they need to work on in the draft. And that might take the form of things to be deleted or reduced, recommendations about areas that could benefit from additions or expansions, corrections, anything that needs to be fixed up because it is an error, and clarifications or questions about what they mean. So even if you're not sure that there's a problem here, you can indicate that you're confused about something. And that can be helpful because if you're confused about something, then the writer isn't doing their job. So feel free to include questions like, I'm not sure what this means. Can you tell me a little bit more? Or can you be a little bit more specific here? Just to tell them that you're not quite getting what they're trying to tell you. And some examples. Most of your sentences are clear, but there's a few that get away from you and become run-on sentences or unclear due to the shifting focus. Your body paragraph has a good, or your first body paragraph has a good topic sentence, but most of the other body paragraphs are missing topic sentences or main points. Your voice is very interesting to read, but make sure that you don't use first person point of view, I, me, my, or refer to yourself as, per the assignment requirements. And each of these actually starts with a positive thing that they're pointing out. So they did something right, but there's examples where it didn't go quite right or areas for improvement. And then the last one is negative feedback, which we do not want to use. And negative feedback insults people. It can be negative generalizations or provides judgment on things other than the writing, such as the person or the person's capabilities. So some examples. I don't really like your topic. Okay, that's not really that helpful, right? Because they've chosen that topic and you just saying you don't like it doesn't really help them. You're just being negative. You didn't really try in your rough draft, did you? This is tough because, we don't really know when we have a rough draft what's going on, if this is the best example of what somebody can do if they put a lot of time and energy into it. We aren't 100% able to accurately assess that. So indicating that you don't think they tried hard enough can be hurtful. You really need to work on everything. There's not much good here. So making a generalization that everything needs to be worked on, there's not much good here. Honestly, maybe that might be true, but you shouldn't point it out. You should point out instead if there's things that are working or are close to working, and then point out the other errors that need significant attention. And your paper is a mess, which is not good. Again, might be true, but not something that you want to say to somebody. And again, it's because we don't know. Maybe it isn't very well developed yet because they haven't had much time to work on it. Maybe they need a lot more help. Maybe they're not understanding the assignment. Who knows? But just telling them it's a mess is insulting. So don't do any of those things. No negative feedback. Only positive feedback and critical feedback that's trying to help them. So don't do this. This is a cyanide and happiness cartoon here. All right, so there are two types of feedback that we can give. There's global feedback and local feedback. So we'll start with global because it's bigger and actually what you should be focusing on most of the time. So global feedback would be errors or issues that interfere with the comprehensibility of a draft and the communication of ideas. So generally, the feedback that you are trying to provide is mostly paragraph level or bigger. And that's because you're not trying to focus on editing or sentence level issues. So think mostly paragraph level and bigger. So you can look at topic sentences. Those are important in academic writing. Do body paragraphs have clear topic sentences? Sometimes you can get away with implied topic sentences, but for the most part, instructors want to see actual topic sentences. Are they in the right place? Do you have supporting detail sentences here? Are they the right ones to develop the point that's trying to be made? Can supporting detail sentences as a whole, can some of them be cut, or are more additions needed? Which blends into idea development. Are you developing your ideas thoroughly and supporting them with whatever is needed? In some cases, that's source material. Sentence order within the paragraph and then paragraph order within the paper. Is that the best order that they can be in? Is it logical? Does it make sense? Appropriate audience and purpose for the assignment and the project. So you're probably given a topic or a framework by your instructor. Are you doing the right kind of topic toward the right type of audience for the right purpose? Release of information. Is the information you're providing your reader in the order that it needs to be? Or are you providing information too late in the paper that should be given earlier? Looking at transitions between sections or between paragraphs, looking at the use of source material. So are they quoting, paraphrasing, summarizing, and borrowing ideas? If they are they using citations and the appropriate citation style? And then the general formatting and layout of the paper. On the other hand, you have local feedback. Those are errors and issues that interfere with the clarity or meaning of the language, and they are generally sentence level or smaller. So you're looking at issues like grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, word order, clarity of the sentences, looking for typos, and stylistic choices, which may not be wrong, but they might be better. So looking at word choice, tone, diction, level of sophistication for the audience, and so on. And it's more important to focus on global feedback for most drafts, and that's generally where people want the most help because your content is generally more important than how you say it. So the global feedback generally is what people want and can benefit from the greatest. The local feedback typically comes in later drafts or is something that's like the last thing that they need to check off as part of their revision process. And of course, a joke. What about you? What's your blood type? I'm a typo. Get it? A typo. Okay. So direct feedback and indirect feedback, these are two styles that you can use for providing feedback. Both of them are good, and honestly, you should try to use both of them. So direct feedback is where you are telling or showing the writer how to correct or address a problem within the draft. So for example, if you're showing them what to delete by using, for example, track changes, and you delete the word and then it crosses it out with track changes, you're showing them what you would change. If you're adding wording, you're showing them what you would change. If you're rearranging wording or sentences, you're showing them what you would change. And generally telling them how you would go about fixing whatever the problem is. In comparison, indirect feedback is the kind of the opposite, where you indicate that there's a problem, but you don't show them how to fix it. So you can say, here's a problem, and explain what the problem is, and you can show the writer where the problem's located. You can do that, once or twice, a few times, although typically people don't show the problem throughout the entire draft, because if it happens multiple times, it can happen a lot throughout a draft, right? So you could show the first few and then say this continues on throughout the draft. But after you explain what the problem is, show them a couple places where it's happening, you don't tell them how to fix it. So they need to figure out how to fix it on their own. And you may say like, hey, that's not really helping them. It actually is. So research has found that indirect feedback is more helpful to student writers in most cases because it leads to greater cognitive engagement, reflection, and guided learning and problem solving. And although error is greatly reduced from one draft to the next, as students respond to direct feedback, student writing as a whole improves over time as a result of indirect feedback when students are asked to find errors and solutions to errors on their own. So you won't always have an editor available. You won't always be able to have a source of feedback. So you don't want to be over-reliant on somebody else pointing out your own issues to work on and telling you how to fix them. So when you're giving feedback to somebody, you want a mixture of the two. You want some direct feedback and some indirect feedback. You can just show them how to fix it, and then other places you can say, here's the problem, here's where it's happening, and they can figure out how to fix it on their own. And lastly, on accepting feedback, it is really tough, and people in society are not always used to accepting any kind of critical feedback. They definitely want to be told what they're doing well, but it can be hard to hear what they need to work on. So be as careful about providing that feedback in a way that people are going to accept it. Be as careful as you can. And when you are accepting feedback, make sure that you are not being critical of people who are being critical of you. Make sure that you're open to accepting that feedback, and don't treat the draft like it's your baby, right? We need to be able to change it, to add, delete, move things around, to change whatever needs to be changed to get the best final draft possible.